Alrighty, welcome to another Full Throttle Thursday. Appreciate y'all being with me. So obviously, the big news is, of course, this Black Hawk helicopter that went down and crashed into the Potomac River. It seems like everybody is now talking about it, and we're learning and we're finding out that more than likely this was another case of DEI, and thank goodness DEI is ending. So the first thing I want to start with is actually President Trump absolutely crushing Pickle Pete. Listen to this. This is great.
The website shows that the agency's guidance on diversity hiring were last updated on March 23rd of 22. They wanted to make it even more so. And then I came in, and I assume maybe this is the reason. The FAA, which is overseen by Secretary Buttigieg. Real winner. That guy's a real winner. Do you know how badly everything's run since he's run this Department of Transportation? It's a disaster. He was a disaster as a mayor. He ran the city into the ground, and he's a disaster now. He's just got a good line of bullshit. The Department of Transportation, the government agency charged with regulating civil aviation. Well, he runs it. 45,000 people, and he's run it right into the ground with his diversity. So I had to say that then it's a group within the FAA, another story, determined that the workforce was too white, that they had concerted efforts to get the administration to change that and to change it immediately. This was in the Obama administration just prior to my getting there. And we took care of Africa.
So there you go. It was too white. Didn't matter, right? Meritocracy doesn't matter. I'm getting an echo. Is everybody getting an echo?
Yes.
Yes,
bad echo.
Were you even able to hear that? Or was it hard to even hear?
It was echo.
Yeah, someone has to mute.
Okay, we got really bad echo there.
Everybody,
What's going on, Marlene?
We're in it twice.
Yeah.
this happened last week, and I think it was because someone wasn't muted, and then it echoes back from their device.
Should we log out and log back in?
Is that what we're gonna have to do?
Well, is everybody who's not speaking muted?
It's constantly doing it, so we might as well. I don't know why it keeps happening, but
Okay, let's try this. I'm gonna mute everybody except for Josh.
okay. All right.
Oh, no.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2.
That's better.
Okay, so now all of a sudden you can hear me.
Yeah.
That's weird. Okay. All right. I guess I'll have to edit this part out. Or we can start over. Either one. It doesn't really matter. What do you want to do? Editing is going to be a pain in the ass, but
Let's start over.
you start over? You know what? Do me a favor. Mute me. Go through every person first before we start.
Okay, Josh, I muted you by mistake, so go ahead and just unmute for a minute.
Okay, so you didn't hear what I said. Gotcha. I was going to say before we start over, mute me and then go to each person and let them do like 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 and see if there's an echo, and we'll see what's going on.
Okay, so I'm gonna mute you. I'm gonna start from the top with Glenn.
But they had 2 or 3 on there that weren't paid. But I found that
Okay, so Glenn, can you hear?
Can hear, but I can hear somebody else talking too. Can you hear me?
Okay, I'm muting everybody else.
Okay. That testing 1 2 3 4.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I'm muting you, Glenn. Carl, you're next. Go ahead and unmute, Carl.
Yeah, I did. Testing 1 2 3.
Okay, perfect. Okay, Liam, unmute, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, testing.
Okay, and then Carol. Oh, Carol,
Hello.
there you go. Sounds
Hey.
good. Okay, go ahead and mute, and then Pam and Jeff.
Yeah. Marlon, you have a little echo when you speak, but
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I'm speaking through my phone. I have myself muted on the computer because of the feedback. So I'm
okay.
normally muted.
That's good.
Yeah, that's better. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, Gail. Gail, you need to unmute. Oh, Gail, you're muted. There you
Okay.
go.
One,
Oh,
two,
you sound
three.
great. Perfect.
All right.
Okay. Jason. Get
1, 2, 3.
awesome. Okay, Lit Mysteries next.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Perfect. And then Walter. Walter. Looks like he's driving.
Okay, testing 1, 2, 3.
Okay, awesome. Okay, sounds good. Everybody stay muted until you're asked to, when that Josh calls on you. So Josh. Oh, Josh, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you perfect.
Okay, it looks like everybody else has good sound, but we have kind of wasted like 10 minutes. So,
Okay, so we should
why
start
don't,
over?
yeah, why don't we just start over? Everybody come back in and hopefully everything will be fine. So.
Okay, so I'll just stay here. Everybody exit and come back.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Welcome to another Full Throttle Thursday. Thank you
Yeah.
everyone for being with me. Looks like we have the sound situation all good now. So, was DEI yet again responsible for this absolute mitigated disaster that happened in Washington with this Black Hawk helicopter crashing into an American Airlines flight and then going into the Potomac River? From what I'm understanding right now, there's at least 60 to 65, maybe even more than that are unaccounted for or possibly dead. It's a travesty. My thoughts and prayers go out to everyone, all the victims in this horrible event. But the question now remains is why? My question, first and foremost, is why would a Black Hawk military helicopter be flying in commercial airspace over DC? I think that's the number one question that needs to have an answer. But besides that, President Trump has come out and said that he believes that this is DEI related as well. And he completely just destroyed Pickle Pete, talking about all the diversity and equity and all that garbage. He's also now signed an executive order, a brand new executive order, to actually go and investigate all DEI having to do with the Federal Aviation Administration. So he's not playing around. They want to get to the bottom of it. So what I want to do is I want to talk about some of the things that we already have heard and that we already know. But in particular, this is a pilot's view of what may have happened here. This is, let me scroll back over to here. This is Dominic Nichols, 23-year veteran of the British Army with operational deployments in Iraq, Afghanistan, the Balkans, and Northern Ireland. Originally a cavalry officer in the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards, he later transferred into the Army Air Corps, where he flew Gazelle helicopters. Here is what he is saying may have happened here. In order to enable safe flight, I got my glasses and I'll use them. Airspace is split into categories ranging from very tightly controlled areas around airports to other zones, and mostly rural, where rules are much more relaxed. The most stringently controlled zones are called Class A airspace, such as the area around the Ronald Reagan National Airport in DC. Pilots must obtain clearance from air traffic control to enter and accept in an emergency situation. They must follow ATC instructions such as heading, height, or clearance in order to land, according to these reports. If reconstructions of the situation in Washington on Wednesday night were able to be constructed, it would basically show that passenger aircraft seems to have been given clearance to line up and land on runway 33. The runway is then laid out on a heading of 330 degrees, with the opposite direction being 150 degrees. And then he says, the helicopter was going straight at the airplane for an extended period of time. It was clear night. The lights on the planes were on. They were working and operational. So the question is, how did this helicopter not see this plane? That's number one. And number two, what led to this collision? And how come air traffic control didn't say, hey, there's a Black Hawk helicopter within striking distance of your airplane? In ordinary flight outside of controlled airspace, when two aircraft are approaching each other, the aircraft on the right-hand side has the right of way. This is why one wing has a red light and the other one has a green light. Approaching aircraft have a visual cue to avoid actions such as this, depending on which color light they may see. Once given clearance to land by the air traffic controller, an aircraft does not have to alter course, even if it seems as if it, in this case, an incident where another aircraft, the military Black Hawk helicopter, is closing in on its right-hand side. The helicopter should therefore have given way, right of way, to the passenger jet. The crew of the Black Hawk should have also sought permission from ATC to cross the active, meaning to fly over the active runway and an imaginary line extended from the runway out to the ATC's zone limits. This is another safety mechanism designed to keep aircraft landings safe and other airspace users clear of one another. In the ATC transcripts released so far, no such permissions seem to have been given. So there's a lot more to it than that. But what you basically have is you have this helicopter that was in commercial airspace, and they're not saying why. If they were doing any type of training mission, they wouldn't be doing it over the Potomac River. They would be doing it in rural counties or over maybe like an Indian reservation or even a military, installation or something like that. There's no reason to do it in the middle of a metropolitan city. So that's the big part of what we can see is happening here. Why was that helicopter in commercial airspace? The other thing is, was this DEI? That's the real question here. President Trump seems to think so. The pilot was male, the co-pilot was female, but the FAA fired a whole bunch of white pilots for diversity quotas between 2021 and 2023. So once again, DEI is likely the issue here, right? And DEI is deadly. Let's face it, it is deadly. Lahaina, Palisades Park fires, so many others we're probably not even thinking about. Hurricane Helene, maybe if they didn't alter that in some respects. DEI is deadly. And it's really, really sad that this happened. So my question is to all of you, and we'll start with you, Glenn, first. Do you think from what we know so far, and again, I'm not saying you're an air traffic controller or anything like that. It's just your opinion. Do you think that this was either, I don't want to say intentional because it wouldn't have been intentional. Was this either incompetence along with DEI, or could it have possibly been something else that maybe they're not reporting? What are your thoughts? Go ahead, Glenn. There you
How
go.
did you ever mute before though?
That's okay.
I'm not used to doing Carl, but I think it's a little bit to do with all of that. And then them being around a commercial airport, were they in the wrong area and thought they were in the right area? Possibly.
Exactly.
They don't, don't have the experience to know
Mm-hmm.
who guided them into there. I don't think they let military pilots just fly wherever they want.
They don't. Not in commercial aerospace, unless
Right.
they're doing some type of nefarious activities.
Well, and then it's possibly that, but I don't think, well, oh, here, let's go kill everyone,
Yeah,
including,
I know. I agree. I don't think this was intentional nor nefarious. Um, but I definitely think that this was more than likely very much avoidable. That's at least, my take on it.
I think they thought they were somewhere else. But why didn't they try
Mhm.
to avoid an accident? No idea.
Right.
You
And
know?
that could be the case. All right, Carl, go ahead. Wait the 5 seconds for you to unmute yourself. So what are your thoughts, Carl? Do you think that this was another case of not having competent people in control, and that's what caused this?
Well, the thing that doesn't make sense is why didn't the chopper see the aircraft?
Right.
That's what doesn't make sense.
Right. Visibility was clear.
Yeah.
There was no rain. There was no snow. I don't even think there was any wind. It was cold. Obviously, it's very, very cold there. Could the engines have froze? Maybe. I mean, that's a possibility that maybe they, were coming down and it was too cold and the engines froze. That actually happened, I think, in 1982? There was another flight that crashed in the same spot. And in that one, it was a snowstorm, clearly. And in that one, they also had the engines freeze. It wasn't necessarily pilot error or anything like that. So, these things can happen. So who was next on the list? It was Gail. Gail, what are your thoughts here? I mean, I know none of us are air traffic controllers. Nobody probably has any aeronautical skill, at least that I know of. I certainly don't. And we're all kind of just guessing here, but it looks like this was DEI related.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, my audio is still on.
Yeah,
Okay,
you're
it
good.
goes on and off, on and off. I don't know why. Okay, you can hear me though.
Yes.
Okay. I think, well, the pilot they said he was experienced, but he wasn't that experienced. And I think it's DEI, the pilot and the co-pilot, both. And
Mm-hmm.
and as far as where they were, I don't think it was intentional. I mean, how could it be? What motive would it have to kill a bunch of kids,
Right.
on a,
Right. And from what we understand, there was a lot of like Russian and American figure skaters, I heard, that were on board. Some of them, pretty well known, I guess, in figure skating world. I've never heard of any of them, of course. But that's a little strange, maybe. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem like there was anyone on board that was like wanted or, a terrorist or something like that. Because, you think about flight Pan Am 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland. Well, that was taken down because there was somebody on board that they wanted dead, and they said, "We don't care. We're going to kill everybody." But again, I don't foresee it being that kind of an issue.
Well, they did an interview. I saw an interview on Newsmax where they were interviewing someone black, but no thing on black people because they, as long as they're efficient. But they asked him all these questions and he knew nothing about aviation, nothing at all.
Right.
And they were
And
gonna-
I'll admit,
Biden
I
appointed him.
don't know that much myself, just from what I've read. So I'm not going to come off here and, be some kind of an expert because clearly I'm not. Liam, what are your thoughts on this? Have you done a little bit of research? You've been reading about it. You think this was just DEI and just incompetence?
I mean, seems pretty obvious, though. I haven't done any research. I mean, we're seeing the articles about the DEI stuff going around, and thankfully we have the new administration to stop all this legitimate administration. But I think the question at heart here as well is how do we take care of those families and friends who've lost their loved ones in such a horrific event?
Exactly.
I mean, if it's mismanagement, and that, firing qualified people and replacing them with woke people, that's going to be harmful. So you got to lay down the law.
Yeah, absolutely. And, they need to investigate it. Obviously, they will investigate it. And I think that they need to do what they always do, which is appoint someone outside or someone from the aeronautical, space to look into it. That's what I hate. They do these independent councils and then they grab people that don't have the experience, right? They do that all the time. In this case, they're going to need to have that type of an investigation. I feel better knowing that President Trump is in control of the government. I feel like we're going to get a straight answer at least this time. So let's see. Carol, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think this was just DEI and incompetence?
Sorry.
No,
I
you're
think
good.
that's, I guess, what it is, and that's really unfortunate because that's a lot of people died, and that's a terrible, terrible tragedy. And I just feel bad for the families, but I bet it's DEI. There's probably just incompetent people in there. It's terrible.
Yeah, it really truly is. And we hope that they find some survivors.
There's
mean,
none, they said. None.
Yeah, I know they have said none, but it's so sad. I mean, would they say 67 people, including the crew, died in this? At least that's what they're reporting. Pam, what about you? What are your thoughts on this one? Anything different from the rest of us?
Jeff and I are having a fight about this.
Oh,
So-
okay. Possibly a different take on
All
it.
right. So we like to listen to this guy called Blanco Lirio. It's Blanco Lirio, and he's on YouTube. And he's already got 2 YouTube videos explaining things. And then there's other guys already that have studied and found out the graphics of what's happening. So the jetliner had to follow the Potomac River, and then there's 2 runways. And at some point, they made a right turn to go down the proper runway. So they were coming down. The helicopter was taking off. And so the helicopter at some point got to 300 feet or 3,000 feet, and the plane came down. So, okay, so they don't know about why the helicopter hit them. They don't know why there are other planes. There's lights all over the place, and the helicopter pilots wear these special glasses so that they don't get too much glare, so that they can see planes going on. So Blanco Lirio is really good. He's got 2 videos. So Jeff and I are arguing about, did that jetliner, were they told ahead of time which landing strip to take? Because
So
if they took
which runway, basically?
Yeah.
A total of 3 runways, and I thought I heard that they were supposed to land on runway 1, and then they were told to switch to runway 33, which put them on a head-on collision path with the helicopter, pretty much.
Huh. Okay.
'Cause
And I didn't hear that. That's very, very interesting.
and we're fighting because I'm saying it doesn't matter. They should have had, the air traffic controllers had contact with both of them, but the helicopter wasn't on the same frequency as the plane. So it's going to be a lot of errors, but I hope that if the air traffic controller goofed up, that they will get in trouble for it. Whoever's fault it is.
Blanco Lirio, he's a pilot in Northern California. We've been kind of looking at some of his stuff off and on for years since the spillway at Oroville problem because he lives near that. Anyway,
So he's a pretty smart guy.
yeah, and so anyway, the plane was coming down, the helicopter was going up. So I'd like to sit in one of these helicopters and see if I can look up and see a plane that's above me. I don't know if how that vision would
Gotcha.
work.
And that's something that he was suggesting as well.
Well, he didn't suggest it. That's just my question. I just
Oh, that's
don't
your
know enough
question.
about
Okay.
these helicopters.
Well, one thing that I did hear is that there was not that many air traffic controllers. There's been a shortage of air traffic controllers. And can
Yeah,
you
they-
guess the reason why? DEI. Because they fired a whole bunch of male.
Also, they have not paid put money into in the FAA.
That's the other thing too.
Put it
Absolutely
somewhere
correct.
else.
Were
Absolutely
they
correct.
required to take the COVID vaccines?
That's another thing. What happens if one of the pilots for either aircraft just, died midair? We don't know. Why else would they have done this?
Or the air traffic controllers, were they required to and they quit because of that,
Right.
or got fired because of that?
I mean, that could have been right. Again, a shortage of air traffic controllers with experience because maybe they didn't take the COVID jab or they were too white or too male or whatever. I mean, it's just crazy. Jason, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, this screams to me as just complete DEI incompetency from what I can tell.
Yes, I believe it's incompetency in DEI. First of all, I don't think that military should be around commercial space. That's one thing.
That needs to
I
be
was
answered.
I,
Why?
I was also watching the Ingram angle before, and she had on two experts,
Mhm.
and they were all over DEI. One was a former commercial pilot who flew for many years. And I forget what the other expert guy was, but the gentleman was, but they were explaining that the air traffic controllers were so low. They didn't have many people in there, obviously, and they're lower than some of the other places. And um, that what was it? I'm sorry, but I'm having a blind spot here. But they said
okay.
that no, they said they're being overworked. The pilots are being overworked, and the air traffic controllers are doing double, triple duty, and to watch so many of the whether it's many of the planes or let's say a helicopter, all at the same time, being so
Mhm.
low.
Yeah, again, and why were they so low? That's the other question.
Well,
Why were
they
they
were
flying at such a low
and
altitude?
that was DEI. They were talking about DEI on that matter.
Yeah, exactly. Walter, look, what is your thoughts here? But before I even get into that, remember, and I reported on this probably about, I don't know, maybe 2 months, 3 months ago, there was a report out that the Biden regime wanted to fire all of these white male pilots and things like that, and they wanted to replace them not just with diversity candidates, people that were deaf, people that were blind, people that were paralyzed and handicapped. You know what I want to know, Walter? I want to see the medical records of every single one of these people involved in operating this helicopter and this airplane, because if they have severe disabilities, then this was 100% DEI. What are your thoughts, Walter?
Well, I think that it's a given, number one, if they support DEI, they already have a severe disability.
Yeah, that's true. Good
But
point there. I like that one. That is so
it
true.
just the fact that you run a Black Hawk helicopter, which has a FLIR system, which is forward-looking infrared, and has the most modern radar available on almost any aircraft. It's astounding to me that this could happen, quote, accidentally. I think that it was arranged by someone in the air traffic controller's booth because they want to start having helicopter crashes, car crashes, fires, tornadoes, hurricanes during the Trump regime. So
Okay.
I think that this was done intentionally. I don't think it was either set of the pilots or anyone aboard either of the aircraft, but I think that this was arranged to happen.
Okay. So you're the lone wolf. You think this might be intentional, and who knows? You might end up being correct. We don't know.
Oh,
Little mystery. What are your thoughts on this one? Is this intentional, as Walter might suggest here, or is this DEI? Or both, maybe.
Okay, well, I'm having a hard time. I would have a hard time believing that it's not intentional because over
Okay.
the years, in an interview I saw a long time ago with a CIA agent, he's dead now, but he had said that they'll go and kill hundreds of people just to get to their one target. So who knows? There are just way too many coincidences involved. I'm looking at Satanists love certain dates and they have a fascination with numbers. I'm looking at the fact that Tanya Harding, of all people, decided to do her video just hours before the crash happened.
She wasn't on it, was she?
No, but just, I mean, what she did to Nancy Kerrigan, and then she makes this
Yeah.
video.
What was her video that she did?
I didn't see the video, I just heard about it, that she put it on her X account, talking about how happy she was with ice skaters and stuff like that. It's just too eerie, you
But
know?
here's the thing: why would they want to kill ice skaters? That would be my question. Or was there somebody on board that they're not releasing the information yet? That
That's
was
what
right.
I think so, because they couldn't even seem to make up their minds about whether or not anyone was on that helicopter. Those particular helicopters can be, they don't need to have a pilot physically inside. And then they go pulling somebody out of there wearing a draped with the American flag. They need to make up their minds. Was someone on the helicopter or not?
Hmm.
And
Okay.
just
Well,
don't-
look, we're all skeptics, and you know what? When you're a skeptic, you're way ahead of everybody else because if you take everything at face value, you're gonna be in trouble. You know, what do they say? They usually say, believe 50% of what you see and nothing of what you hear. Is that the saying? I think it is. Well, we're going to find out because President Trump just signed an executive order to investigate and undo DEI and woke policies the Biden imposed on the FAA after the helicopter plane collision. So we'll find out soon enough. We'll have to see. So President Trump is doing something right now that is just really truly just unbelievable. It's never ever been done before. He's actually in the process of not just eliminating Washington, but actually shrinking the size of Washington, which is something that I've talked about for a long time. There's a report out that he wants to sell, listen to this, he wants to sell 70% of the office buildings in Washington, D.C. I love this because if we eliminate all of these different buildings, and by the way, the majority of them are vacant or uninhabitable. Okay.
oh yeah.
Yeah. So imagine all of this real estate. And by the way, it'll be sold for like pennies on the dollar too to private industries and private businesses and private citizens. I love this because if he eliminates through Doge or whatever, and he just cuts and cuts and cuts and gets rid of all the waste and all the spending and all that stuff, they're not going to have the ability to fill it back up because all the real estate will have been sold. I mean, this is like the best thing I've ever heard. It's unbelievable. So the story here is this one right here. U.S. government has a landlord, and Trump is not a fan. The Trump administration is considering selling 2/3 of the federal government's office stock. Shortly before he was elected president in 2016, Donald Trump took a break from campaigning to attend a ceremony for his new flagship hotel, the Trump International Hotel in Washington. The General Services Administration, the federal agency that owns, manages, and leases much of the government's real estate, had previously awarded President Trump the rights to redevelop the government-owned old post office as a luxury hotel. The GSA selected President Trump over Hilton, Marriott International, and other big-time operators. Just before cutting the ribbon on the hotel's opening day, Trump took a moment to praise the agency, saying, quote, "The GSA people are amazing professionals," end quote. But since then, since he's learned how evil GSA and the rest of the government is, Trump has soured on the GSA. That change of heart could soon accelerate a shakeup already underway in the federal government's real estate portfolio. The GSA manages a massive portfolio of federal buildings consisting of 370 million square feet nationwide. Many have been poorly maintained due to lack of funding and are sitting empty or underused. Then it says this. The Trump administration is considering selling 2/3 of the federal government's office stock to the private sector, according to people familiar with the transition operations. 3/4 of the 70 million square feet of office space the GSA leases from private landlords in DC is also likely to be canceled, according to Don Peebles, a longtime Washington, D.C. based developer. A sharp rise in GSA canceled leases would pressure DC landlords, many of which count on the GSA as an anchor tenant. A GSA spokeswoman said, quote, "GSA continues to work to right-size the federal portfolio and is committed to working with the Trump administration to optimizing space in federal buildings. GSA could further accelerate these efforts with funding from Congress," she added. The GSA has also been working to reduce the real estate that it owns as more of its buildings are deteriorating from a lack of maintenance. But it is hardly an easy task. Before auctioning off any properties, the GSA must typically make them available free or at a reduced cost to government entities. Ultimately, the agency doesn't keep the profits of the sales. President Trump will now stop that. Much of what it can sell, people said, will likely be at fire sale prices. That could drag down the worth of other DC office buildings, which have already plunged in value in recent years. Buildings will sell for 30 cents on the dollar, she said. It's a paradigm shift. There will be a dramatic reset on property values. Trump and the GSA have a long intertwined history. Marjorie Merriweather Post, heiress to the Post cereal fortune, owned the Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. She turned over the Palm Beach property to the federal government upon her death in 1973, but the GSA found it too expensive to maintain, returning it to the Post Foundation in 1981. President Trump then acquired it about 4 years later, and it has become the resort that it is now and his primary residence for many years. Trump crossed paths with the GSA again in 2012 after the agency picked his family's company to manage the old post office as a luxury hotel, the jewel in the Trump's lodging portfolio. And if the Trump decides to make a play for it again after selling the lease in 2022, the GSA will have to approve that purchase. But the relationship began to deteriorate a few years later after Trump clashed with the GSA over emails it turned over as part of the special counsel's investigation into the Russian interference in the 2016 election. However, following his 2024 election victory, Trump has mostly kept his distance. He's shunned the GSA's offer to provide temporary office space in DC and other resources during his transition. That makes him the first president-elect who did not accept resources as part of their transition since they were first offered starting in 1963. The GSA was founded in 1949 by President Harry S. Truman, long before Trump's Department of Government Efficiency, where Elon Musk has vowed that DOGE will slash up to $2 trillion from the federal spending. The GSA was the original vehicle for cutting government waste. However, years later, obviously through Congress changing the rules and things like that, it has become anything but that. The GSA was the original vehicle for World War II with its mandate to try to save taxpayers' money. However, over the years, its role evolved into serving primarily as the government's landlord. It also functioned as federal agency's one-stop shop for goods and services, including computers, vehicles, and catering services. Lawmakers tried to help the GSA very recently when Congress loosened some selling restrictions for a select group of federal buildings, allowing the agency to market or auction many buildings at once. But that still won't make the unloading of many of these properties that easy. Some massive government buildings are empty or inhabitable, said one former official. Many others were built in the 1970s and haven't been maintained for decades. So here's my question to everybody, and you may not know the answer, and I certainly don't know the answer, but I'm going to start backwards. So I'm going to start with you, Walter. is this legal? That's my first question. Can he actually do this? Does he have the authority as president to just sell 70% of the buildings in Washington? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the buildings are owned by the executive branch, so I don't see why not. As long as
Okay.
it's under his umbrella of jurisdiction, he can do whatever he wants with them.
Do you think there's going to be challenges to this, legal challenges?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it may not even come from the Democrats. It may come from, like you were talking about, other property owners. It may come from tenants. It may come from anybody and everybody.
Okay.
And I think ultimately he can do it, but it's going to be a long, hard legal battle.
Right.
He's
But
shown
if
that
he's
he has
able to
this.
do this, my goodness, that would be amazing. I mean, that's almost like a permanent cut of government if you think about it. Even if they came back, the left, they would still not have the size of the government that it once was. I mean, what are they going to do? They're going to buy them all back? I mean, I don't think they would do that. I don't think they would want to spend the money on that. At least that's my opinion on that.
I think they would.
You think they would?
Because they want to bankrupt the country.
Well, yeah, I mean that's their goal. But I think what President Trump is trying to do is try to insulate the government slashing and cuts. I think that's what this ultimately is all about. Little Mystery, you're next up. What do you think about this? What are your thoughts on this? And do you think that he's going to be able to pull this off?
Oh, he'll be able to pull it off, but not without issues because they fight him on everything. And
Okay.
gonna go after the people. They always want to come after us.
Mm-hmm.
So this will be interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how this plays out as well. Jason, what are your thoughts on this? So we're cutting the government. We got Doge. We got all these people, executive orders, cutting federal employees and everything else. But yet 10% or less are actually active in Washington, and these buildings are just about all empty. So you think he's going to be able to pull this off?
Who's next?
Jason.
Okay.
Where is Jason? He's not on? Oh, okay. All right. No problem. Pam, we'll go to you then. You think he's gonna be able to pull this off? Yep, you're muted, Pam.
She's been muted.
There you go. Okay.
All right, in Orange County, they've closed 2 military bases that, in the last 40 years, Tustin helicopter base, and then down at El Toro. And so,
Okay.
and Jim?
Well, I flew into Baltimore back in the 90s, and I was driving west to some smaller town on business, and I saw a freeway sign that said Social Security, next 12 exits.
Wow.
I'm not
that's
making this
weird.
up. And I don't know if the sign is still there or what it looks like now, but I was amazed when I saw that sign. I wish I could have had a picture of it.
So on
So
the
that's
side of
just-
the road, it said Social Security 12
Did-
miles?
A freeway sign said next 12 exits. Next 12 exits.
And
Social
where was
Security.
this?
I was
Baltimore.
driving west from Baltimore. I don't know.
Huh.
I don't know exactly where I was.
That's strange. I mean, there's so many SS's, right? I mean, there's Secret Service, there's Social Security, there's, I don't know, there's probably a few others. So I'm wondering if it was like government buildings or agencies, because it seems really weird to have a sign like that. I've never heard of that before. That's very, very strange. Okay, so let's see here. Whoops, there we go. Okay, so next up was either Jeff or we can go to Carol. Jeff, I'm sorry, you just said that. So Carol, what are your thoughts on this? 70% of the buildings that he could possibly sell. I mean, I love it. I hope he does it. I just don't know if he's gonna be able to pull it off.
I think if anybody can pull it off, Trump can, but they are going to fight him. And ever, but I think, this man, he has survived a gunshot. He is the comeback kid. So I don't think I think he's got a plan and he's going to do it.
I think that he's had 4 years to think about every single entity of our government. And I think he's kind of sat down like a mad scientist and said, okay, we can do this, we can do that, we can do this, we can do that. Hey, what about this? What about that? And remember, in 2021, after they stole the election from him, after the whole January 6th craziness and all that, there was a group that opened up called the America First Enterprise Institute. And I remember reporting on it back then, and I was like, wow, this is so cool. So it's going to be all about America First principles and values, and it's going to be people from the Trump administration running it. So they've been working on limiting government when they had an opportunity, right? That's what Project 2025 was all about. Russ Vought was the brainchild, basically, of Project 2025. He's now the OMB, right, for President Trump. He was his OMB again in his first term as well. Now he's in his second term. So all of these people that he has surrounded himself with are not only professionals, they're not only intelligent and with experience, but they have seen Washington and now they know, okay, here's what we're not going to do. Here's the pitfalls that we're not going to fall into. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I think right now the left is spinning because they have no idea what's coming next. And I agree, some of the strength of President Trump is clearly his unpredictability. Okay, Liam, what are your thoughts here? 70% of the buildings gone in Washington, D.C.? I mean, Chapter 4 of Preserving Liberty, what do I say? Close it down.
Close it
Right?
down, baby.
Dismantling Washington, D.C. I might get my wish. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts, I mean, I'm going to second what Walter said. If it's under the executive branch and President Trump has the authority, great. If you need approval from the legislature, the Congress, then okay, do that, whatever. But yeah, you don't need all these bureaucrats running around. Close it down, make something useful from these offices. I mean, I don't really know what else to say. But yeah.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. Gail, what about you? What are your thoughts here on
I think it's a great idea. It's a great idea. They can't accuse him of trying to profit off DC. I guess they would try, but
Yeah, I'm sure they would try. Maybe he would take the profits and, donate it to charity, or I don't know. I mean, I guess he would just sell it outside to other businesses. But you're right. How would that, is there a conflict of interest? In other words, if he's selling the buildings through the executive branch, you're correct. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. Are they going to accuse him of some type of conflict of interest, or, making money on government buildings, where he's talking about how he wants to cut government, but yet on the back door, he's selling all these buildings, making a profit. So yeah, I can see that argument and that narrative forming. That's a good point. It's a really good point. Carl, what are your thoughts here? 70% of these buildings could be gone, we hope. Cutting government for real. You think he can get it done?
Yeah, that'd be good, and that'd be less buildings that these wackos can get in there and F things up.
That's absolutely true. And if these buildings are empty and we can get rid of these buildings, and now these people have to come back to work. Remember, only 6% of the entire federal government works in DC. That to me is a mind-blowing statistic. It truly is. It goes to show you the old adage that government is worthless. It doesn't work, literally and figuratively, and it can never do anything as good as the private sector. And that is all true. And these people that work for the government are like sponges. They're not sponges, they're like ticks. They're like leeches. Yeah. And they're taking taxpayer money and they're living off of it. And now the jig is up. And he point blank said, sorry, you don't come back to work. And was it February 6th or 7th? I forget what it is. And you're all gone. So yeah, the Supreme Court's going to be very, very, very busy. I mean, they're going to be constantly dealing with every single lawsuit that is coming down the pike. They're already trying to freeze the funding. Although I think it's important to know, and believe it or not, Iris actually pointed this out. I watched this video from Reform California. This guy was explaining it. They rescinded the memorandum, but they did not rescind the federal freezing of hiring people. So the media is lying, saying, "Oh, Trump's been stopped." That's not the case. That is not the case. The freeze is still continuing at this point. Who was next? Carl. Glenn was next. Glenn, what are your thoughts on this? Can he get this done? And does he have the authority? Is really what we need to find out, if he has the authority to do this.
Well, if Scott is correct about him having it goes through the executive branch, then he does have the authority. What I would do in his shoes, knock the buildings down and put up a parking lot. Then there's going to be no question about it. You need more parking there anyway. So just knock all them buildings down. If they're, it's going to cost a lot to rehab them.
Plant trees.
And then who's going to buy them? And is it going to be China buying them up? Is it,
You won't
somebody?
sell it to China.
Yeah, no, we can't do that. Absolutely not. And I'm
Well,
sure
no,
that
but
this administration would be smart enough not to allow the Chinese to buy.
But there very well could be a secretive buyer that's doing it for them.
Yeah,
You're right.
no,
There,
they
there
do
could be a
that.
straw purchase, or what do they call that?
But I mean, if
shell
they're
company, yeah.
right. So my solution would be, if I have the authority to say what happens to those buildings, whoever's in them better get the hell out, because we're coming over with the ball and chain, and they're going down to the ground. We're going to clean them up and put in parking lots. We need more parking there. And
Need more parking. Well, I thought about something else. How about we leave a couple of the biggest of these buildings that are empty, and we put cots in them, and we put little rooms in them with bars, and let's put all of these intel officials that we prosecute right in Washington. You can still stay in Washington, folks, but you'll be behind bars. Or we could send them to the gulag. Even better, right? So look, I think, Trump 2.0, or should have been 3.0, but Trump 2.0 is much, much different than Trump 1. Because the first one, it was new to him. He didn't know where the bathroom was. You could tell. He still did a lot, even not even knowing what he was doing, really. He still did a lot because he's a businessman. And that's why I went on Real America's Voice, and they asked me about the California fires. And I said, look, he ought to use leverage and say, look, until this person is fired and that person is fired, you're not getting any money. And now President Trump has actually come out with an executive order, and you can learn about it in the Reform California video that Iris put out. And basically, you have the Secretary of the Interior, Doug Burgum, the governor of North Dakota, who's now the Interior Secretary. He's now oversight of the money, not to mention Rick Grinnell as the point person for any funds that would go to California. That's number one. But number two, the Secretary of the Interior is overseeing everything. And guess what? We are going to be able to dictate to California how California can be rebuilt. So Karen Basshole and all these other leftists out there that think that they're going to, quote, reimagine a new Los Angeles. What did she say the other day? Reimagine a new Los Angeles and rebuild it in a more equitable and environmentally sustainable way. That's what she said. She's going to go outside like a communist would, right? She's going to go outside and hire somebody to do that. But you know what? She's not going to be able to, because we run the government. And now the Interior, if they want, remember, it's all about this. You want this to rebuild, you're going to rebuild it the way we want you to rebuild it. So I'm not too worried about quote unquote smart cities and high rises instead of homes. I don't think that's going to happen. I will say this though, the insurance companies are broke. They all went out of business. And even the ones that are still, I guess semi-operational, they don't have the capital. They don't have the capital to replacement cost $14 million mansions. These people are going to eat it. They're going to eat it. Can some of it be rebuilt? Yeah, but you're talking $2 million homes, $3 million. They're not going to be $15, $18 million homes. It's not going to happen. I'm telling you right now, there's not enough money. And even if President Trump oversees the whole thing and rebuilds it, it's still not going to be exactly what it was. But what it won't be is it will not be more DEI in the future. Anyway, those are all my thoughts for this evening. Can't wait to hear all of yours. Marlene, go ahead and go for it. Anybody else want to stay with me for a little bit afterwards and talk and chat? No problem.
I'll
We can go
try.
ahead and
The
do
back
that.
is going.